Hello, I'm football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Foot Weekly Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Week 9's gameplay episode. A slightly different one for you this week. We have zero gameplay expertise on this one. I'm joking. I think we can provide a bit of expertise. But I'll start off by introducing Josh Excels. Hello, Josh. Welcome back.
Yes, good to be here. Just cozy chat about, gameplay, how we're playing, how we're finding enjoyment in the game at the moment. Because I will say, I think the last maybe week, I don't know about you, it's been a bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's interesting. I have to say, fair play to EA's patching approach, because I do feel like currently I'm enjoying the gameplay more than I have throughout this cycle. And do you know what? I would go as far to say the last week or two of the game I have enjoyed more than any point in 𝗵𝐶𝗰𝗏, which is probably because I didn't really enjoy the gameplay until the new patch, and by the time the new patch came we were kind of in the last half of the cycle. But it's been good, and the evos have helped as well, because there's been quite a lot of evo content to get into, which actually we talked on last week's supporter gameplay episode, about evos and our approach to them. Some of the players we've done. We talked with Ivan, pro coach, about the sort of recommended play styles and things like that for evos, and it was interesting to chat to him about that. But on this one, we're going to talk a bit about our approach to gameplay, both in a kind of tactical and mechanical sense, but also in terms of what we're playing, which I think is something that is interesting, because it's not as straightforward as perhaps it used to be, where there was this sort of standard rivals and champs grind to the game, and maybe we'll actually start there, and maybe get on to kind of our approach to gameplay itself in a bit. But what have you actually been up to, Josh, in the game, and what's your kind of weekly approach like to the different modes that we have now?
Yeah, so as a self-confessed menu grinder, I've spent quite a lot of time in the menus, because League SBCs have been here and have been decent. But when it comes to gameplay, it's interesting, because I felt like in the past, content, it used to be you could do all of the content that's available to you, and then it moved to you've now got to pick and choose what content you do. Not all of it's available to you in terms of SBCs. You weren't going to be able to do every SBC, and then now we're in a weirder spot of you can't. I feel like you can't really do all of the gameplay stuff unless you spend hours on the game every single day, which not everybody can do. So for me, I kind of made a decision at the beginning of the cycle not to play champs. I will say the way rewards are, I'm questioning that decision, because that is a lot of
coins.
Yeah, that's a lot of rewards to miss out on. But with the way that Gauntlet has been, especially the last two gauntlets, where there's been, I think it's 10,000 coins, 10 or 15,000 coins has been the coin reward, and you've got 83 by 10s. It's not actually that far away from champs. And, so, with how kind of stressful it seems like people are playing champs, and I know how, in my own head, I get playing it, it's been quite fun to be able to interact with the game almost on my own terms a little bit. Rivals, I can decide to grind if I want to. The rewards really make it questionable whether that's worthwhile grinding. But having a tournament every week, sometimes having two, having the gauntlet to go into, I have found that the place that I enjoy the game the most, because you come up against different teams. It tends not to be the same meta team every game. I'm slightly frustrated by the Silver League, because that does feel like I come up against effectively the same team every game, bar 3 players. And that's normal, right? We've got all of these icons that we've been given that have got really good stats for silver cards, but you kind of, I wish there was a limit maybe. You can only use 3 of them, and it would just promote a little bit more variety in the squads that you kind of see in the Silver Leagues. But that's more where I'm playing the game right now, because I feel like that's more where the fun lies, whereas Champ seems a little bit more kind of full on. And I think maybe, I mean, even if we talk about the pod Discord, it does feel like there's a bit more of a push towards just having fun, using Evo teams. I think once I get my the Dong Throng up to like proper standards where I feel like they can go into champs, maybe I'll bring them into champs then, because I don't care as much about the wins that I get because I'm using an Evo team that's maybe like not as good as the meta. Yeah, exactly.
No expectations. Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, you mentioned the Silver League. It's something that I was going to ask you about actually, because I found myself just not having time to finish it last time. Like I just didn't get very far into it. It's a lot of games for mostly a midweek sort of like spread or window. And then I agree with you. I felt like gameplay wise, I didn't enjoy it hugely because it felt like a lot of the same teams that I was coming up against. And also, you got this thing where those icon silvers are just like that much better than the other players, that it means that actually people are playing in a way that they're like forcing it to those players. And also it feels like the carefully selected silver players, apart from 𝘬𝘵𝘠𝘕, who's just stupidly good, do feel quite far behind the curve, which is, just, I don't know, it just felt a little bit like hollow in a way. And people obviously spend a lot of time. I mean, some of them are sort of semi-passive, but getting those icons and then, having to get them to actually even enter the mode. And then actually, I don't know whether the gameplay experience is that enjoyable. And I think although the rewards are pretty good, actually, it is a really like long grind. And you can just get that grind done by like spamming games, right? As well. So it's like could be a really long grind if you're not picking up the wins and really want to get to the win target. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one to me. I don't know that it's I just haven't found it as enjoyable as say Gauntlet or even some of the like cups or even some of the really casual cups where you don't really need to win games and it's just like, score some goals in consecutive matches and you can kind of like chill and I don't know, watch something on the side or not really care that much about doing it. Would you agree with that? I guess you were sort of saying that.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that there's still room right now for if you've done a very good Evo but managed to like keep the player capped out at silver, that there's that you can gain some advantage by having a player who's very good. Like I think you can get very good centre backs now who are still silver. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because if this is now going to be the same loop for the rest of the cycle, where we get a bunch of these kind of silver icons, then there's a silver league at the end of it. Eventually it will be, this guy's using this silver icon instead of this silver icon. Then there might be a bit of variation there. But yeah, it feels like we've maybe accelerated a little too quickly into kind of what Silver Stars ended up being back in the day, which was, if you played Silver Stars all the time, you'd have all of these like silver informs or silver special cards that were just way better than everything else. And the actual silver element of it fell away. I suppose my question then from a gameplay perspective is, what's the biggest difference, do you think, between the silver games and like a normal like champs game or rivals game?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's probably the quality of passing.
Yeah.
Like you just cannot play the kinds of passes you're used to playing with players with like 𝘃𝑒 plus and just the like passing play styles plus passing stats. And same with through balls, I guess, to an extent as well. That's true. Like if you don't have a player with incisive or incisive plus who's in, I guess, going to be silver and have relatively poor passing stats anyway, it's just generally a lot harder to play the kind of passes that you were playing with your regular team, which I think is nice because it does change the gameplay. But I would say in the first Silver Stars, because that was like pre-patch, it was very like dribble heavy, and that didn't feel so different because you essentially, I mean, that's what people were doing with their regular teams was like a lot of dribbling because we didn't have that improved jockey speed, and silver defenders are obviously quite slow, so not slow actually, but just slower than the jockey. So yeah, I think that is probably for me the biggest difference, and also like some pretty wayward finishing at times, right? Because the shooting stats are poor. So yeah, it's a more considered kind of gameplay style, like a bit more. I think you had to think about your approach a bit more. It couldn't be as automatic as playing with your regular team. Yeah, I don't know whether you'd have anything to add to that, but I think that's where it can shine. Like that's where it can be good, because that is a different kind of gameplay experience. But as we get these like improved silver players, that sort of starts to disappear to some extent.
Yeah, like for me, it felt like having to kind of change up how I defended. I don't feel like on the ball I changed quite as much. I did feel the passing being different, but I tend to try and pass where I'm facing rather than necessarily like the kind of spin passes that I think you get really punished for with those silver players. And it was more like how much you could kind of jockey and how much you could try and kind of bait people in, because if you baited them and they bit, you weren't always going to win the ball. If they really like accelerated into the gap, especially, was it 𝘵𝘀𝘀 or 𝘵𝘂𝑰𝑥, who we had, I think, from the first season that had technical plus. It's like, if they just technicaled into that gap that you wanted them to go into, you actually couldn't catch up. So I found that quite fun. And then also, like, I know everyone was using Yashin in that first one, but even like silver goalkeepers, like even that Yashin, you notice the difference in terms of like stats and like the ability to save shots. So taking shots from slightly different areas, the ability to bring on someone who is very strong and really feel that in the game, like there be an actual advantage to having a very strong player. It was interesting because, you know, I felt like stats were way more important then at silver than they are when you're at the kind of bleeding edge in gold, because with gold and special cards, it becomes more about play styles, which I think has been quite a big like topic being spoken about this week, is like how important play styles are and whether that's a good thing. So yeah, like I don't know. I quite enjoy it. It reminds me of like back in the day when you used to just go into friendlies. When I say back in the day, I'm talking like over a decade ago, where it was like you just load up into a friendly with a silver team because it tried to match you against a team that was of a similar level to you.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they couldn't handle 5-star skill moves because the players just weren't quick enough to react to it. So yeah, it's been fun. And I also think I've seen you have some games where people just play exactly the same tactics that they're playing with their main team. And then you play against people who have got curated tactics for their silver team. And I feel like they are much more difficult games than people have gone, oh, I'm just bringing the same 4-5-1 in. Because firstly, like the icons don't fit perfectly into that like 4-5-1 setup that people have. And when they then try and augment it to change it, lots of things then change about the way the team plays, and there's more gaps and more holes, and it's not as coherent. And I do think forcing people to use different formations would be interesting, because I think a lot of attacking ends up being pattern recognition of like, I know I can play this pass, I know I'll get this run, and you start having that timing. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying we shouldn't have those like timings, but it's interesting then to be put into a different game mode where it's more reactive rather than kind of just you could close your eyes and know the passing pattern you're about to play.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, we've probably talked plenty about silvers specifically, but I realise I haven't said what I've been up to in the game, so we'll take a break and we'll do that after. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time, and then someone suggested setting up the Patreon, and since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod. Hello, welcome back after the break. So, what have I been up to in the game? Well, people will know if they've been listening for a while. I'm quite committed to playing champs for some reason. I don't, call me a madman. I don't know, but I just quite enjoy the kind of. There's something about the sort of weekly resets to it that you start on nothing, and there isn't some kind of pre-existing matchmaking conditions like you get in Rivals. It isn't. It is competitive, so like there's an element of like challenge to that, which I quite enjoy. So I've always consistently played champs basically since its inception. So that is the one thing that I will kind of always do every week, and the other stuff I think is a bit more varied. And like I have missed entire weeks of Rivals this cycle, which I've not really done previously. I say I haven't missed entire weeks. I must have played it a bit, because otherwise I don't know how I was qualifying for champs. But I think I played it up to the champs qualification, or maybe it was that time that we got champs qualification points for free, right? That happened, I think. So yeah, I guess I've played Rivals, but probably not as much as I have done previously. I mean, you talked about the rewards not being particularly great, but it's also competing with stuff during the week, which does have good rewards and also is a bit more novel. But it's also been quite interesting in Rivals, because it means that I'm definitely behind where I should be in terms of skill. So I can basically get my rewards pretty efficiently if I do play, and will get my champs qualification points fairly quickly, because I'll win consistently. So I think that has been something which is a bit different this cycle, in terms of not playing Rivals so much, and also just like actually engaging with the sort of, I guess, because of course we had live FUT friendlies before, right? That was essentially the equivalent of the tournaments and Gauntlet, and I just feel like this is just so much better than live FUT friendlies. Like I just didn't really want to engage with live FUT friendlies, whereas with the structure that we have now, I'm way more engaged with that stuff. I think Gauntlet's really great, and like I really enjoy playing with different squads. I think that's something that they've done really well generally. I know they changed the way that the rewards were given, and I think that did kind of make sense. I think that actually also I don't know, there was a bit of me which was like, when they made it less competitive, would I be as engaged? Because I think the competitive angle is part of what I engage with in the game. But actually, I've found it still good. Like, I think I'm still finding it compelling enough, and it's probably because they've put interesting Evo rewards into a lot of these. And like, I think I was mentioning on the content pod that I was pleased to see there was like this Bruiser Evo, which I was going to add to this like really OP 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦 centre back that I've been building. And then after we recorded the pod, they released a quick step Evo, which also applied to that same centre back. And I've done both of those on him, sort of grinded it out in a way that, I wasn't massively enjoying the gameplay experience, but I wasn't like hating it. And sometimes it is fine for there to be a grind, which is just a means to an end, like I think there is a place for that. Like, it's not something that I enjoy doing loads of, but here and there, when the reward is going to be good and you want it, like sometimes it does feel okay to do that, and that was fine. Actually, that Evo, at least last time I checked, was number 4 centre back on the Evo leaderboards on foot.gg, so was worth completing. I think So, and I think building Evos has been a big part of my motivation to play those more like grindy modes, I guess, which aren't built around like competitive play. And it's been interesting to use different players. I think I've definitely used a much bigger variety of players this cycle versus previous cycles. I think that's been quite good. In terms of like, I guess, what we've been up to tactics wise, which might make sense to move on to. Do you have a tactic that you've been using recently that you'd like to share or give thoughts on, or something along those lines?
Yeah, and it's actually one from the Discord. And this, we actually shouted out 𝗏𝗀 on the content pod this week. He's getting a double shout out on both pods. But I've been using his 3-4-2-1 because when the game first came out, I started my favorite formation was the 4-2-3-1-2, and then that became the meta formation. And then about a month ago, maybe even longer, I was talking about using a 4-5-1 on the pod and really enjoying it. And then in the last 2 weeks, that's now apparently the meta as well. So now I'm moving to the 3-4-2-1 because someone else is using it and having fun. And it's interesting. I think since we moved to IQ last year, 3-backs have kind of been very difficult to play. It feels like they never really got the wide mids correct in the past. I think it was the year before. Maybe it was the year before. 3-5-2 was super overpowered because you could have get back on defense on your right mid and left mid, and it effectively meant that they played as wingers when you had the ball and then dropped into a 5-back when you didn't. And there wasn't really a role in IQ that allowed them to drop far enough to be able to defend as a 5. And you tended to just like have to attack with them. And whilst I think that was like necessary, because I do think there is absolutely a danger if you make the 3 and 5 back too powerful that it's like the only formation anyone uses, it was kind of sad to not have it as an option. They've added a few different like tweaks to the roles this year, and I do feel like those wide mids do perform better. But also with the way that people are playing with the 4-5-1, they only tend to have one player left up the pitch anyway, and so you don't really need those fullbacks staying back. So, you know, I've been playing like a 4-back formation and having both of those fullbacks either on inverted or on attacking fullback to just have them be useful, because it just felt like they were there when I didn't have the ball and I hadn't got it back for a long period of time. They then went and sat in, and that's not really what I wanted like them to do. I wanted to use them, especially once we got like Jordi Alba. He's got tiki-taka. You want to be able to feel like you can use him in build-up play. So that's how I'd been using the 4-back. All I'd heard from 3-back is it doesn't work, is that the centre-backs drift, the centre-backs don't really know what they're doing. And I think that's because people haven't been using wide-back. So Macca's tactic, which we'll put the code for in the description, he has 2 wide-backs either side of like the defender centre-back, and it feels like they positionally work way better than any other role in either of those wide centre-back roles. It's like they kind of know what they're supposed to be doing. Whereas if you try to play like 3 centre-back defend, they don't really know, should they be marking the wide player? Should they be staying central? And so you can't predict where they're going to go. There are often times as well where like the wide centre-back ends up swapping with the wide midfielder, or like feels like he should go and like stand with the wide midfield and just leave a player completely free and behind. So there's absolutely like a getting used to it period. But the reason why it works is because in attack, it's unbelievable. So you've got, it's the 3-4-2-1. So you have 2 cams and a striker. One of the cams is on shadow striker and one of the cams is on playmaker roaming. So it effectively like becomes a bit of a 3-4-1-2 because the playmaker roaming likes to drift inside. But on his side, instead of having a winger, it's wide midfield support. So the playmaker can sometimes drift in behind to like kind of play a 3-4-1-2, but sometimes they can run wide as well. And you end up with like a kind of 4 in attack because you've got the winger on one side, you've got the playmaker who's drifted wide on the other side. The midfield is box to box and deep lying playmaker. And so you have like real verticality in the team. There's like people in little pockets of space throughout the pitch. And the last patch, I think, especially in the 4-5-1, started to leave more gaps that you can play in and exploit when people aren't defending. Like when it's just the AI dropping back, there's a few more gaps now. And it feels like this finds those gaps better than anything else. You're going to have high scoring games because you're essentially choosing not to sit back and defend as much. But I'm really enjoying 3-4-2-1. Like there's something about it. I will say it allows you to have 4 effectively midfielders as well because you have 2 cams and 2 centre mids. So it's a lot easier to get more tiki-taka plus in, which allows me to play a lot more of like first time passing, which is what I like, passing movements. But you get so much dynamism in the runs that it's very difficult for your opponent to mark every single run. They can mark the most dangerous one, but there will be a second run that they can't cover, that the AI hasn't covered. It's just a lot of fun to use.
Yeah, sounds really good. And then, so defensively, you haven't particularly found the centre-backs? Because I think, I don't think I played wide back, maybe when I used the... Because I did play the 3-5-2, I think, at one point. I don't think I used wide back, but yeah, I did find that, and I was using wide midfielder on the left mid and right mid, but I was finding that the centre backs did seem to kind of go all over the place. I mean, actually, to an extent, in the fullback they do as well, but there's only 2 of them to do that, so it's not as much of a problem. But yeah, you didn't find that the centre backs were just like going missing when they were attacking.
Not as much. And that is, it definitely, when you come up against, if someone's playing a 4-4-2, it becomes a lot more difficult to defend because both of those centre-backs do want to drift a little bit wider. And so when you've got two strikers, that's then difficult. Runs from midfield aren't tracked quite as well as you'd hope. But if you're more of like an active defender, if you're more proactive, I find that the wide backs do position themselves better than like anything else. And kind of allows you to put more heavy pressure on a wide midfielder with your wide midfielders. And then if they break past, the centre-back's kind of ready to spring out and go and put pressure on them. And it's a bit 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘀𝘁. Like, it's not comfortable defensively like other formations are. You're effectively choosing to defend with 7 players rather than with 9, which is like how people are defending in the 4-5-1. But I think for the fun you get in attack, it's worthwhile. I also think as well, you kind of have to manually defend a lot more in this 3-4-2-1. You have to be more ready to grab centre-backs, to track runs, to use your midfielders, like, than you can get, like, than you could get away with in other formations. And with EA saying that they're going to reduce the strength of AI defending, I actually think it's a really good formation to kind of like, I don't know, get used to having to defend manually a little bit more. Like, I remember going into completely different game mode on a very different tangent, but I started playing Apex Legends, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the way that the game looked. I enjoyed like a lot of it, but I'm terrible at first-person shooters. Like, I'm absolutely awful at first-person shooters. And so I was like, the only way I'm going to get better is to constantly get myself into gunfights rather than avoid them. And so I did what would be called hot dropping, where you'd like drop into an area of the map with loads of loot that everyone would go to begin with. And it was just like, right, let's see if I can survive when it's quick. You have to react quickly. You're against lots of people. You know you're going to get in a fight. And if I get killed, then I can instantly come back and I just go again and hot drop again. That's what this feels like. It's like, okay, this is it's going to be active defending. It's going to be a lot of like 1v1 defending going on. But I think it really teaches you how to defend properly, which it's not great if you want to maximize your wins. But if you want to maximize fun, I'd definitely give it a try.
I'm also thinking, like, you know, as a sort of chasing formation, different option, it does sound like something that could be useful there. I know I was going to say, there's a lot more versatility from fullbacks in terms of them being able to play left mid or right mid or centre back this cycle. So you probably can switch without, I don't know whether switching without subs from a fullback is going to be possible, but you can certainly do it with less than perhaps you would have done previously.
Yeah. The one thing I'd say is as well, like the way that the game sets up this year from a defensive perspective, I actually feel like if you have DMs, you're at a bit more of a disadvantage because the game still wants to keep the like general formational shape. And so when you haven't really like moved people out of position, you'd have your kind of 4 defenders, your 2 DMs, and then like your wide mids and cam would be like a step up from them, or a centre mid. Like they would be like a step up from the DM. And that's, I think, why the 4-5-1 is so popular, is because there's no need for that like step of DMs. That the whole midfield drops that extra 5 yards to like sit on essentially your back line, so you're in that 4-5. So I think people have tried to make a 3-5-2 work, but that has 2 DMs. And so now you've got your 3 centre-backs, you then have the 2 in front, and then it's a gap. And then you've got that middle 3, which I think is why that didn't work well defensively. Whereas in this, because it's 3-4, you have that flat 4 in the middle that drop back. So you end up having those 7 to defend with. But on the flip side, the thing that you get with this that you don't get in, say, like the 4-4-1-1, which I know is quite popular. I know I think you're saying you were using it. Like, the thing that you get with a cam is that trying to pick up those spaces between the midfield and defense, or trying to get that run from deep that's not tracked kind of thing. In the 3-4-2-1, you've got 2 cams, and unless your opponent is playing with 2 DMs, they can't pick up both of those cams. And so that you kind of always have that spare man in attack. But if they then do play with the 2 DMs, they don't have that super deep like 4-5 setup that you get in the 4-5-1. So you kind of have an advantage regardless of how your opponent sets up.
Yeah, it does sound really good. I think I'll give it a go. I think I'm just trying to work out how I can adapt to it to give it a try, because it is, I guess, like outside of the scope of what my players are currently suited to, which is always a bit of a tricky thing with the three back and 5-back formations. Actually, 5-back a little bit easier because it's fullbacks, right? Slot in a bit easier to that. But yeah, it's interesting as well, actually, with the whole kind of shift towards people playing with centre mids, because you made that point about the fact that there isn't that kind of defensive midfielder to almost like force the centre mids forward, and I think that's why it's so popular. And also they give you a lot more going forward, and they get back and play basically like defensive mids in the way the game works currently. And I do think a formation that I've always really liked is like the false nine, right? And that traditionally has been something you'd use the 4-3-3 brackets 2 for, so the one with the CDM and the 2 centre mids. But now, actually, I was thinking you could probably do the 4-3-3 flat and turn it into a false nine, and that would probably allow you to get the benefit of those 3 ACMs that are so popular in the 4-5-1, and you'd miss out on the fact that the left mid and right mid do a really good defensive job, obviously, because they'd be right wing and left wing, but you'll still be able to like use those players to defend a bit, but you might have to be a bit more manual with them. I think that could be quite an interesting thing to try out as well. And yeah, well, I mean, actually, as Josh mentioned, I've been playing the 4-1-1, and it's interesting because I tried it in the past, but I'd always preferred the 4-2-3-1 brackets 2. So it's basically just the same formation, but with 2 CDMs, because 2 CDMs have always been fairly superior in terms of their like defensive output, and also with the like roles that you have now. They were quite good in attack last cycle. There was options to kind of bring those players forward. Like I used deep lying playmaker build up quite a lot last cycle, and we've even got box crasher now, which I use for a bit. And I think really, though, switching to 4-1-1 was just way better than the 4-2-3-1 brackets 2. As we've talked about, like the output in both directions, even defensively, feels better than the CDMs. And yeah, you do get a lot more help in attack, which is nice. And I also think it seems to help the left mid and right mid drop back more. The fact that you've got centre mids, not defensive midfielders, which is interesting. And the cam seems to help as well a bit more in the 4-4-1-1 defensively, which is quite helpful. And actually, I can show the specific tactic that I'm playing, because I sent Josh a link to my GG club, so he can bring that up. But I'll start by saying, actually, interestingly, I am playing balanced for the attacking and defensive approach, which isn't necessarily something that I've done in the past. But I feel like with the through ball meta at the moment, not having centre backs that are as pushed up is helpful. And I also find team press on the D-pad is fairly useful. And if I want to do some pressing, I'll flip that on for a bit. And I also sometimes switch to, just increase the depth if I'm chasing a game. But there's nothing particularly, Josh has got it up now for those watching a video, but there's nothing particularly kind of novel about this, actually. But there are a few things to kind of point out. You've got a goalkeeper, I'm kind of going with often the plus or plus that the goalkeeper has, and I've been using Edison, so he's on ball playing keeper build up, which actually can be quite nice for playing passes back and getting the keeper involved, especially as he's so good at passing. But I think sweeper keeper is really good. Obviously, like, people will be aware of that. So that's probably my kind of first preference. But anyway, I've got the 2 fullbacks on fullback.
Before you move on from goalkeeper, on that, one of the things I would say is I just would never have goalkeeper defend on. Like, at minimum, have goalkeeper balanced. Like, I just think it's a shocking role. I don't know why, but I notice it massively in game.
They're so like passive, and goalkeepers charging out, if they have rush out and footwork, is just like one of the most effective ways to use a keeper, I think, in this game. So yeah, keeper charging is like a big part of defending, I think. So yeah, the 2 fullbacks on fullback versatile. For those who don't know, the versatile role basically means that contextually they will either fill in as part of a back 3, or they'll go forward to support the attack, which is quite a nice way of kind of having a a flexible defense which isn't too exposed. And then across the midfield, you basically have one of your right mid or left mid on inside forward and the other one on winger. I think that's actually quite crucial. Like, anyone playing two inside forwards is just doing it wrong, in my opinion. I would rather go two winger than two inside forward. I think that the centre of the pitch gets way too congested if you play inside forward. It just spreads out the defence if you have a winger role. And I myself currently have both, I think, as plus role players, both inside forward and winger. I think that definitely makes a difference. The output you get defensively from a winger is really good, and I think it's like maybe too good. The amount of kind of like tackles that the wide players make if they're on winger is just way higher, I notice. So yeah, I would definitely recommend. And then in the midfield, kind of centrally, I've got box-to-box ball winning on one of the centre mids. I'd probably try to have that on the same side as the side you have the winger, ideally, because they do push forward into the box, and there is the space to do that on the side that the winger is on, whereas inside forward can sometimes kind of conflict with the box-to-box on the other side. Also, actually, the box-to-box can go too wide, and that can be a problem for like defensive cover and also just them not being that useful. And then the other centre mid, I have deep lying playmaker defend, so they're just like a slightly less aggressive centre mid. Also important, just so you have that like recycling option, someone to pass through in the midfield. And then quite simple for the attacking midfielder and striker, we've got shadow striker for the attacking midfielder and advanced forward for the striker. And yeah, it's really important that those two players are really good. I mean, like, it's obvious, but like they really do need to be like technically very sort of sound. I think having incisive and a passing play style on both of them is pretty important. And actually, yeah, Josh is just looking at the squad. You can press view squad, right? Just down there to the right. That will bring up the squad itself. So yeah, in those roles, I have the 𝘬𝘃𝗀𝘀𝘁, who I think I mentioned in the past, is through that Adama Evo, with the 𝘬𝘃𝗲𝗀𝘀 style, of course, to make sure he's explosive, as I mentioned. And yeah, he's just really, really effective. It's kind of funny because the Trickster Plus is not an especially useful playstyle plus, right? But it is useful if you do the L1 strafe dribbling, which I do sometimes do, which can be nice. But his base play styles are just phenomenal. Like, he has probably one of the best selections of base play styles for an attacking midfielder in the game. All the ones you'd want, basically. And then I have this 𝘵𝑚𝗀𝘬𝘐, throwing it back to last cycle, as much as it pains me. And he has Finesse Plus. And actually, he's one of the first players I've used consistently with Finesse Plus. And I really swear now by the Finesse Plus low-driven regular combo. I think it works really well. And it's amazing how many low drivens he'll still score, and I think that's probably because people expect the Finesse Plus, right? You know, they see it down the bottom, they're like, oh yeah, he's going to finesse, and then you take the low driven, and that beats them. And yeah, elsewhere, I don't know whether personnel wise there's any players to mention. Got Jordi Alba in there.
Simeone, Simeone.
Yes, actually, that is worth mentioning.
Unbelievable as a free card.
He is such a good player. This is the UEFA Prime Time, and I think the thing that people will be interested in, from my perspective, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, is his 3-star skills, which, you know, just for me is criminal. But he's just so solid. Like, he's so consistent in what he does, which is basically just be an outlet, like, you know, provide that option to kind of come in from the wide area and then play the tiki-taka plus pass inside for a cutback. It's just it's a very blunt instrument, but it's something that I think helps me out a lot in terms of simplifying my game, because I can overcomplicate it, and it's just like, yeah, get it to the fast guy, play it across the box, and there's probably going to be a goal in it. And we've talked before about the effectiveness of first time shooting, and I think that's like a really nice combo in that sense. And yeah, I guess I've talked about him before, but the Oosterwolde with that Jockey Plus, like ridiculously high GG rating, what was that, 97.1 or something, that he's got. He's just a monster of a card. Like, I think he feels, it's kind of like playing with players that we'll get in a few months' time now. Like, he's so good, and I actually think he's really exposed that Hanko is, who I've been using, you know, the SBC version is is quite behind, and I think 𝗪𝘀𝘁 actually really suffers from the fact he doesn't have an intercept, and it's something that I wanted to kind of flag for people. I think like base intercept, I don't know how you feel about this, Josh, but I think it's almost like a cost of entry at this point for centre backs. Like and actually just defensive players generally, and in the midfield if you can get it too. Like I just don't think you get interceptions sometimes that you should without intercept.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Like, obviously, I mainly intercept the ball when I'm not controlling the player because that's how interceptions work this year. But like, definitely, I would say like as a base play style, intercept is an absolute must-have. I do think defensively, I'd maybe err on the side of like jockey and anticipate, maybe slightly more in terms of a play style plus. But I do think that the base intercept is just so important, especially with now people are passing the ball a lot quicker and you're getting a lot of like first time shots happening now where it's kind of like get it down the wings, recycle it to the edge of the box, like a pinged pass into a striker who takes a very quick shot. So you need the ability to intercept, essentially to counter tiki-taka. That's really what's going on there, I think, because tiki-taka is so strong and makes it so difficult to intercept the ball. You kind of need that like extra little juice in terms of the interception. Like, kind of I just want to slightly move back to Simeone for a second, because he is 3-star, which I think is the only reason we've been giving him for free. I'm interested that you're using him on the left. Is that just because you have Jdź and you'd like to use him? Because because with him being right-footed, like I would find that using the tiki-taka to pass inside would be a lot easier with Simeone on the right.
But the mad thing is that tiki-taka is so good that I don't think it matters that much. Like, I think off his left foot, he's still really, really good at playing those passes inside. His passing stats aren't even amazing, to be honest. So I think that is covering for that. But yeah, it's interesting. And I think one thing I have found quite important is both 𝘬𝘁 and Rutter have incisive as a base play style. And it is wild how bad through balls are if you don't have incisive. And like if you're ever like, oh, like it doesn't feel like I can play the passes my opponent can play, like just look into the play styles you have on your players. Like it's probably going to be that. And it's not like I'm playing them all the time, but they're just those crucial moments where you're like, oh, I need to be able to slip someone in here, and like without those play styles, I just don't feel like you can do it. And I would also say, yeah, it's funny actually you were mentioning Simeone. On the other side I have 𝗠𝘰, who I did pack and have kind of forced in, but they are kind of the wrong way around. Like 𝗠𝘰 is right-footed with a 4-star weak foot with finesse plus on the right, and Simeone is on the other side. And it's only because 𝗠𝘰 doesn't have the left mid that I can't swap him, which is a bit of a shame. But he is like, for those who don't know, like running a road to glory, like yeah, it's interesting actually because my team isn't super valuable really. This is players I've packed, players I've evolved. Obviously got 𝘬𝘯𝘴𝘆 in there for the icon chemistry, and actually interestingly, he is really good as well, I should say. And I wanted to mention that I will be probably picking up the end of an era we got yesterday. I think it was the Riley, because she looks like a really solid right back. Nothing particularly special, but has decent base play styles and has crucially the icon chemistry, which having two players who can offer icon chemistry is really strong.
Yeah, no intercept on Riley though.
Well, exactly, yeah, and not on 𝘬𝘯𝘴𝘆 either, which I think is a bit of a shame. But both of them, I think, have jockey and anticipate, which is nice. But yeah, that does feel a shame. I was actually just going to mention, as we were talking about intercept, people will be unlocking that intercept plus, won't they, from the season pass? And I don't know, Josh, if you've had any thoughts about what you're going to do with that. I do think it's a viable or good playstyle plus at centre back still. I think it's close to jockey and anticipate. I think they're all really pretty strong. It depends on the base play styles you have, but I think my thinking is maybe to put it on a defensive midfielder or my more defensive centre mid.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because for me, I think I'd sooner have my midfielders have like tiki-taka or a passing play style than a defensive play style, especially in the kind of meta that we're in now of midfielders over DMs. I think if we were in like a situation where DMs were being used all the time, then maybe I would give it to a defensive midfielder. But I think I'm probably going to give it to a centre back. I don't know. Like I only have 2 centre backs in my Evo squad. Like there's no other dongs that play centre back. So and one of them already has jockey. So it's whether I want to pay 100,000 coins on the I'll protect you Evo and not get anticipate. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think there's necessarily a wrong decision. Like, I think it's going to be a really good Playstyle Plus to have regardless. And if you do have a midfielder that you use way more often defensively, then having Intercept is going to be very useful. I think even having it on a fullback isn't the worst thing in the world. But yeah, I think, yeah, centre back is probably where I would use it, just because I don't think we're using DMs, so I don't know if it's as important for a midfielder. But yeah, I think midfielder or centre back are probably where it would go. I was just going to ask, in terms of the central midfielders, I am noticing massively that you have 3 of your 4 midfielders have got 3-star weak foot, and it really does talk to how much tiki-taka kind of makes up for it. But 𝘭̀rnals is an interesting player. Obviously, you were saying like you're running a road to glory, but I feel like there are other players you could afford that could play in there.
I was actually, just for chemistry, I was using Gerrard for a bit, and then was like, oh, actually, like I can make it work without him, and then have like not really properly, like, you know, he's just someone I had in my club, and I've not really like looked into who I kind of want to play there longer term. And I think part of me is like, oh, maybe Gerrard will be good after his upgrade, but I think that's quite unlikely. But could be possible. He'll probably still have 3-star weak foot, actually, annoyingly, because he tends to not get particularly good weak foot. But yeah, we'll see about that. I do need to think about it a bit, because actually I've started evolving a team of the week. What's his name? 𝗵𝗀𝗀, which I think actually is quite a good option for the box-to-box role. He's got box-to-box plus already. Well, obviously, I like the 5-star skills, which is nice. He's got good weak foot. He's already got really high dribbling stats, so you're just kind of improving the other things. And he's got passing play styles, but crucially doesn't have tiki-taka at all yet. So I don't know, like, that feels like a bit of a shame. He's also, for box-to-box ball winner, it absolutely burns your stamina. It's wild how much stamina it uses up.
It was in the tactics. It was one of the things I was going to point out, is that box-to-box ball winner, I think it's the midfield AI role. Like how active that box-to-box ball winner is when there's no control, there's no second man press. They are like hounding players. It's insane.
It's like almost having like a co-op, like partner who's just controlling the box-to-box ball winner. Like, they're just going around all over the place. It's pretty strong, and but yeah, it does really drain stamina. Although there is the relentless in the season pass, so I'll probably add that to him, and I think maybe that will make it a bit more viable. But I genuinely like have to sub him off at because I noticed that he doesn't like. You know, he doesn't. It's funny. It doesn't matter when you're on the ball because of the changes they're made, right? But if you're second man pressing, it does. So, and that's obviously important. So I think it is important to sub that player off if they do have low stamina. But yeah, you're right. He's the player that I'm looking to improve probably soonest, as well as Hanko as well. And I think with Hanko, it's kind of making that decision over whether to commit the 100k to the I'll Protect You Evo, which I probably will actually. I just think that. It's actually, do you know what? It depends on the Evos we get and the player that I'm going to be able to build, I think, at the end. Because right now, I'm not necessarily happy with the base play styles that I can get on the centre back options. But I would just point out that centre back all roles Evo that's in the season pass is really your friend with I'll Protect You, because it doesn't give any defender plus or plus. So I really would remind people that chuck that on before you take them through I'll Protect You if they don't have a defender role. It's also nice in terms of what Josh was saying about like playing wide back and things like that. Like, you'll get that role as well, so I think that's quite helpful. Well, and where I've talked quite a lot about my squad, we said we'd talk about creating chances. I know we've talked about that a bit already, but maybe we take a break and come back and I'll ask you how you've been creating your chances. Hello, welcome back after the break. So, as promised, I will ask you, Josh, how would you say, and I guess we're talking specifically about the 3-4-2-1, but you can broaden it out a bit as well. How are you tending to create your chances most of the time?
So I kind of mentioned it earlier, and I was doing this a lot more in the 4-5-1, which was effectively not attacking through the middle. Honestly, it kind of depends on how your opponent's defending. Like, if they are a bit more of a manual defender, then you can attack through the middle because it's more of like an even battle. But if they are just someone who's sprinting back and you don't have as much in terms of like, runs going through, being able to pull a player out of position, I found that going down the wings, holding the ball for a little while until you essentially want your opponent's team to have set in their defensive shape, because once they set, the midfield actually steps like 2 yards further up because they don't have the momentum bringing them back anymore. At that point, you can kind of play 2 or 3 quick passes that ends up with a like fired ball into the box, either into an inside forward on the opposite side, a midfielder who's made a run into the box, or into your striker, and then taking either a first time shot or taking like one touch and then hitting a shot. It's about like playing slowly almost, and then a very fast move that your opponent can't react to. That's when somebody's kind of a bit more set defensively. When I'm countering, which is like I think how a lot of goals are scored as well, I actually put a clip of this in the Discord. I've mentioned it before, but the L1 square, the manual lofted pass used as a chip through ball, is absolutely game breaking. Like, it genuinely murders centre backs. They have no idea how to defend it. Like, you can hit a first time L1 square straight at an opponent's player, and you can just like, they will just kind of completely pause and not know what to do and let the ball go past them. Last year, the first time chip through balls were super, super overpowered. It honestly feels like that, but even a little bit more. Even in situations around the box, even when your player's not really making a proper run yet, because it's a manual pass, the game seems to like favor your player getting the ball, and they take unbelievable first touches off it as well. They kind of, I very rarely will get slowed down by their first touch from a manual pass. Because manual through balls have been really strong this year as well. But this just feels like a whole other level. It's been very, very strong. Like, I've kind of given it as a tip to 15-0 players who have been messaging me this last week going, this is silly. Like, I'm using them all the time. So that's been one thing. And then the other thing, which is another tip that I've said before, but I don't think I've said it this cycle, which is the it's essentially like the baby player lock, where you play a lock but don't switch on to another player. So you kind of put in the sticks, the arrow will be above the player who's controlling the ball. You pass the ball, make the run with the player who you've just passed with because you're still controlling them, and then request the ball back. And it's kind of how I imagine player lock should work, which is like you're kind of manually making the run rather than necessarily like switching, manually making the run, then requesting the pass from the player who has the ball. I don't know, it's weird. It makes more sense in my head than normal player locking does. And that, people freak out because you don't expect the cursor to stay over the head of the player that's just passed the ball. It's like, if you're not ready for it, it's kind of like, well, who do I go and mark? Do I like go after the ball? Do I go after this player?
They're waiting for you to switch, I guess, aren't they, to the player you're going to play?
Yeah. And so if they then end up marking the player you're making the run with, you just click in both sticks and assume control of the ball. And if they don't, you tend to just have this like open run at a defense. And like, if there's a gap, if you can see like that small gap that your players aren't intelligent enough to make the run into, you can use this massively to your advantage to like really exploit holes in defenses. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I gotta say, one of the things that I feel with player lock, I know it feels a bit like rubbing your head, patting your tummy or whatever, but also just, I think the controls to trigger it are quite annoying. Like, pressing in both sticks is not a very easy thing, like mechanically or physically to do. And like, even I would use it like quite a lot, maybe a couple of times a game. I guess not a lot, but like relative to most people, use it a fair bit. And I still fuck it up and like end up doing like a flick the ball up or whatever, like every now and again, which obviously can cause you to just lose the ball. So I do feel like if they made the controls like a little bit more, especially if you have to do it multiple times in quick succession, often a bit more straightforward, that would probably lead to more people wanting to try it. Yeah, I use that a bit. I think actually more just I guess how most people use the player lock, but particularly because in the 4-4-1-1, you do end up in situations where you're running with the cam at the defense, and your striker won't always make the run you want them to make. So pressing in both sticks, flicking to the striker, which is normally quite straightforward, and then just slightly changing the run direction to make sure they're avoiding the centre back rather than running straight into them, genuinely like has quite a lot of I don't know, like value, but also like it's quite low risk actually, because generally your attacking midfielder is enough space that they're not going to get tackled by your opponent, and your opponent's going to be quite concerned about the run you're making rather than tackling the cam. So yeah, that's pretty good. That's probably a way I do create a decent number of chances. And I think, though, generally I would say in the 4-4-1-1 there is a risk that you just try and force that a lot, because you will get in that situation where the cam's running at the defense and the striker potentially could be played in. But I think and it feels like the right thing to do, but I think often it actually isn't, and you want to just slow down a bit. And I think because I like to dribble, I guess I'm probably more likely to not play the through ball than most people and want to like beat a player with my attacking midfielder instead and kind of slow it down. So that does work quite well for me. And I think that a big way that I create chances, if there are, defenders coming at my attacking midfielder, is to like beat them on the dribble, which I've mentioned before. I feel like 𝗏𝘃𝗃 is really good at. And I still use, even though he doesn't have technical plus, I use technical quite a bit to create those opportunities. And also the trickster dummy or fake shot. It's like I really like. I mean, it's been in the game for a while. You just literally dummy with a player with trickster, and you get this quite nice little animation that can take you away from a tackle. So I use that quite a bit. I use the heel to ball roll, which is just like hold LB or L1, the way you're going, flick the right stick the way you're going, and then behind you. It's really effective. And I also use quite a few 5-star skillers. So I use, well, I guess less now with Simeone and 𝗤𝘄𝘃, but I use the 𝗪𝐸𝑑 spin quite a bit as well. And I don't cancel it too much, but that can be nice to throw in that variation. To be honest, the 𝗪𝗶𝗹 spin's pretty good as well. So if you want to use that, but like the 𝗪𝐸𝑑 spin can be so clean and fast that it creates quite a lot of opportunities. I also would say fake shots are really good because people know how consistent shooting is, especially with play styles, and will really try and block shots. So if you can fake shot, I think you can just drag players out of position in a way. And
if you can learn to shot cancel, where you hit both triggers before the shot happens, you get a faster exit from that than you do from a fake shot. Like a fake shot, they still have to touch the ball. Whereas if you do a shot cancel, they kind of like just bring their leg back down and it's like you're back to dribbling again. That also affects AI defenders and goalkeeper shot cancels. So you get like better exits from it as well. So definitely like a variation to add if you're someone who does use a lot of fake shots.
For sure. Yeah, I would say I probably use the cancel more than fake shot, as you say, just more responsive. But the other kind of fun thing I've been doing a bit is like, I think especially with people being worried about through balls, and also the fact that like in interceptions, when controlling a player, it really feels like you have to be in the lane. It means that people will move their defenders to try and cover passes quite frequently. And I found that like, making it look like I'm going to pass to Rutter with 𝗏𝘃𝗃 in that kind of pocket around the box, and then actually just like fake shotting away from that passing lane is just something that you'll find a lot of joy with, even if the defense is set, because people will try and control their defenders to block passes and things like that, and assume you're going to play into your striker kind of thing. So I definitely recommend that. And then I think really the main other thing is using the wings. And if you have players with passing play styles, like cutbacks are pretty good. And I feel like actually previously I was struggling a bit to find players who were free in the box, but the 4-4-1-1 with the box-to-box centre mid, you will find that player really consistently. Actually, they do just make that really good run slightly late into the box quite often. And often, I think you mentioned this, like if the cutback opportunity isn't on, then you can play it around the box and play it back in. And I think, that kind of first time shot, or as you said, take a touch, maybe even use a bit. And I think it's quite effective if you've got to play with first touch or first touch plus, using the R1 and right stick flick first touch can be quite nice for creating a bit of space. Although I tend to probably use that more outside the box actually than I would inside. But yeah, because it can be quite a big touch. But yeah, I think that's pretty good.
I need to issue a correction, by the way. I think I was saying L1 triangle, L1 square. It's R1 square is manual.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
I would feel bad, but I think just before we started recording, I saw a clip of Alex Albon, who's a Formula One driver, being asked how many gears he has in his car, and he didn't know how many gears he had in his Formula One car because he said it's just natural. I don't think about it. It's very difficult to remember exactly what you press on the controller to do things because it's just so natural. The one thing we haven't mentioned, which is super broken and overpowered, and you should be using it, is double tap through balls. Where you hit triangle twice rather than, or Y twice rather than just once. And I just feel like you get a lot of assistance from the game with double tap through balls. So that's essentially where they like bounce the pass rather than passing it along the floor. They like put a little bounce on it. And the biggest thing it does is it stops defenders from intercepting it. It kind of like breaks them defensively because, now the ball is 6 inches off the floor. They couldn't possibly stick a leg out to kick it away. And if your player that you're wanting to pass to is behind a defender, the double tap will actively play it like around him and play it in front of you. I also think it works really well for first time shooting as well, because you've got the bouncing ball, which you just get better animations for. You get more curve on it. You get more dip on them if you hit them straight on. So as like a basic tip, which is something you'll probably be coming up against in a lot of games, double tap through balls are super powerful.
For sure. And I was going to add like double tap passes too. I think most of my passes that are cutbacks with tiki-taka Simeone are double tapped passes. It's really effective. I think that probably does conclude it. I think I'm sure there are other things, and if people have any particular questions about obviously anything we've talked about in terms of like chance creation, things that you found effective, we can share on the podcast. Or actually, I know we talked about the whole silver stars, not silver stars obviously, but silver world tour. If there are any thoughts on that, I think it'd be quite interesting to hear them, because obviously, we are just two people, and it's not necessarily
dividing your time as well.
Yeah, and how you're dividing your time exactly.
What is it that other people like? It's weird for me that I've kind of dropped rivals and champs in favor of the other modes, and maybe that's just a case of like, I don't know, I'm a bit older, so my reactions aren't as good, so I can't play in the more like competitive games. And so like I'm wondering if that's reflective of people who are only playing champs and rivals. Are you leaving the live events completely alone? Like, I'd be interested to see what other people are doing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And if you have any thoughts on that, then you can, of course, leave them in the comments on YouTube. In fact, let's guarantee that we will read at least 2 comments from YouTube, no matter what they say, in the next podcast. Potentially opening ourselves up to some concerning comments, but we'll find out. And of course, if you're a supporter, there is the pod priority questions in the Discord being for gold or icon supporters. But you can, of course, comment on the Patreon post if you are not a gold or icon supporter. So you can head over and do that. And we take all those in. So yeah, send in any questions, any thoughts, any comments, any feedback as well. We really appreciate it. So and of course, subscribe if you aren't already on YouTube, on the various podcast platforms, and you'll get the episode into your podcast feed or your YouTube subscription thing. What is it? YouTube subscriptions, that's what it's called. And then, if you would like an extra podcast every week, the content podcast this week, the gameplay episode next week. Is it gameplay episode? Yes, gameplay episode next week, of course. Gameplay episode last week. I mean, every gameplay episode that was a supporter exclusive over the last month or two, you can catch. You can do that via going to Patreon, link in the description, or just search support for weekly. Josh, thank you very much for joining us on this one.
Yeah, no, it's been good to be here. I don't know. I'm finding the game a little bit more fun, which is nice kind of before Black Friday, which I think is when people tend to come back. I still think it's very, like, it is very, very competitive. You know, I think Arc Raiders, Call of Duty, Battlefield, there's a lot of kind of distractions in other games at the moment. So I do think the player base is maybe a little bit smaller. So if you are finding it tough, like, battle through, like, it will get better.
That's a good point.
But yeah, like, I'm hoping we don't have any major gameplay updates soon, like maybe a little bit of a reduction in AI defending, but I kind of want to just learn this version of the game for a little bit longer than 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, no, I agree. As I said at the start, I think it's in a much better spot than it was, and I think a good spot. So yeah, maybe send in thoughts on that too. But yeah, thank you very much to all you supporters for supporting the podcast and keeping it going. It is greatly appreciated. And of course, a big thank you to those icon patrons: Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Josh R, Ralph, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, Make B, Michael H, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Damon H, L, James B, Sam K, The Shirt Locker, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Waterman, Also Ran, and Juicy. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.